A play fake. Young goes deep middle. He's got Jerry Rice. Touchdown 49ers!
Welcome to the 49ers Family Podcast with three generations of 49ers fans here to talk about 49er football. Excited to be here with my co-host today. First up, Grandpa Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going good, and I'm glad to be here, and this is going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So just a little background on me. I'm the grandpa of the group. I'm 80 years old. I've been a 49er fan my whole life. I went to my first 49er game when I was 7. So that's 73 years ago. And I have lived and died with them since. And it's exciting, and I'm really looking forward to this year.
Oh yeah, it's going to be great. As we go through this year, one of the things that we want to highlight on this podcast is Mike's stories. As Mike said, 7 years old, going to Kezar Stadium. We'll talk about that memory a little bit later and how funny that was. But we want to highlight some of those stories and also our own personal stories and interactions with 49ers games and memories and players. It's going to be a great old time. Our other co-host is my dad, Jared. Jared, how's it going?
It's going awesome. I'm happy to be here. I'm just born into the 49er family. I married Mike's daughter, Joanne, in 1988, the year the Niners beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And I've been a 49er fan since. And you're my favorite son, my one and only, and diehard 49er fan who knows it inside and out better than me. And so I'm going to kind of watch or sit back and kind of ride shotgun with you guys as Josh and Grandpa Mike kind of lead the way with their stats and their knowledge of information about football. But I'm here to kind of cheer on the Niners and kind of give the fan perspective. And I am very excited for the year. And Trey Lance, I'm from North Dakota. And Trey Lance being from North Dakota is, I'm excited about him. He's my homeboy and I'm pulling for him. So let's go Niners.
Oh yeah, let's go Niners. Well, great. Well, today we have a full podcast for you. We have a great agenda. Really, we want to spend the podcast today talking about the offseason, all the offseason happenings, including, which players we lost, which players we added, how the draft went, and some kind of potential there. Of course, we have to recap the Deebo drama, everything that's happened with Jimmy. If you're listening to this is Thursday, September 1st, so you know that Jimmy just, I guess, resigned, I guess, with the Niners, or restructured his deal essentially. So very, it's been a crazy offseason as a 49er fan, in the headlines a lot within the national media. We'll also recap the preseason, how those 3 games went, and seeing Trey Lance a little bit, in the first half of game 1 and game 3. And then lastly, with all the roster moves being made and the nailing down of the 53-man roster, as well as the practice squad, what does that look? How are we looking? And end it once again with a highlight of Grandpa's first time at Kezar Stadium. So got a full podcast for you. It's going to be a blast. So here we go.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about the players that we lost. So obviously last year, more successful than I think any Niner fan expected, not hoped, but expected, getting to the NFC Championship, losing to the eventual Super Bowl champions, LA Rams. Wish we could have had that one. What can you do? But some of the players we lost, Grandpa, take us through some of the players that we lost.
Okay, we've lost Lincoln Tomlinson was probably the biggest one, and he's been our starting left guard for the last 4 or 5 years. We got him from Minnesota off the junk heap, really, and he turned out to be a solid left guard. And then we lost DJ Jones. He signed with Denver, and he was a great run stopper.
Mm-hmm.
But Jason Kinlaw is going to take his place. And then we lost Arden Key and Quan Williams and Compton and Mozart and others, but every year there is turnover.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just part of the game. It's, you know, players can leave for more money or whatever. And so we've replaced a lot of those guys, but we lost about 15 guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as losing players, though, Laken Tomlinson, I would agree, is probably the biggest loss, especially as we get into talking about some of the position groups, O-line being one of those that is of somewhat of concern. The other ones, you know, I think we let them walk a little bit. You know, obviously we can try to match some of the deals that these guys got with the Broncos. Arden Key got paid with the Jaguars. But for the most part, we were deep at those positions. Elijah Mitchell having a breakout year last year made Raheem Mostert leaving to the Dolphins okay. I don't think anybody is was brokenhearted on heartbroken over Raheem Mostert leaving. But you know, I think that's a testament to this team, to the roster makeup, the team that John Lynch has put together, is that with the turnover that inevitably happens, we are in a position to succeed. And that was part of drafting Aaron Banks back in 2021 to they recognized that that interior offensive line was going to be a need, that Laken Tomlinson was most likely going to get paid. They didn't know what was going to happen to Alex Mack. So all things considered, in a pretty good spot.
I think if we take just a step further back, so Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are beginning their 6th season. So in the first 5 years, their record has been 39-43.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the record, it's not good, okay? But you have to consider what they were handed when they took over. And they took over a 2-14 team coached by Chip Kelly. And of the 53-man roster in 2016, there's 2 players left, Jimmy Ward and Eric Armstead.
Wow.
So Shanahan and Lynch have totally turned over the roster. And today it's one of the best rosters in the league.
For sure. So, well, let's talk about some of the players that we added.
Okay. Cornelius Ward is a shutdown corner that we signed for a lot of money, $13.5 million from Kansas City. And to me, this was the most needed area. Just, the last couple of years, teams could pass on us. And so now we have a shutdown corner, and it really makes everybody else better. So that was, to me, the biggest signing. And then we signed Oren Burks from the Packers for $2.5 million. He will probably primarily be a special teams player, but and a backup linebacker. And then Ray McLeod, the kick returner and wide receiver that played for the Steelers, he signed for $2 million. Those are the main guys. The Niners were strapped, and we'll talk about Jimmy in a minute, but because of Jimmy's contract, we didn't have a lot of cap money to spend. So, we went through this months and months and months of where his contract was really on the books. So now he's taken a $17 million pay cut, and we have a little breathing room. But we really just added a few players, and then the draft, which we'll talk about in a minute, we really beefed up.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, some of those other, I'd say, notable players that we added. We got Kerry Hyder back from the Seahawks. Obviously, he did well with the Niners, got paid, got a good deal with the Seahawks. They ended up cutting him at the end of the year, and now he's back with Chris Kosarek. He loves being a Niner. I'm excited to have him back. Other folks, George Odom, safety from the Colts, also most likely going to be a special teamer. Tyler Croft is another kind of tight end depth guy, and then Malik Turner was turning some heads this preseason, wide receiver formerly from the Cowboys, ended up on the practice squad. But overall, not too many players added, but I would agree that Charvarius Ward, huge get, obviously the biggest money get, but having that lockdown corner, Jared, Dad, watching the Niners last year, if you're anything like me, it was painful sometimes to see them go after our corners because it was a glaring weakness. So what do you think about them adding Charvarius Ward?
I'm excited about Charvarius Ward. I mean, I didn't really pay attention to the other acquisitions, but Charvarius Ward in the secondary, I think it's going to be a game changer, strengthen our protection against the pass. And yeah, he's a great tackler. He's got a lot of speed. He's very agile out there. So I think he was the biggest pickup this offseason for sure.
For sure. It's something that gets talked about lately with Charvarius Ward, and part of the reason we got picked apart in the secondary was it was so young. Yeah, Ambry Thomas and other corners that were just young, and you go through those growing pains, and now all those guys are back. Well, most of them are back. And we're going to talk about in a minute another addition through the draft that the Niners are really excited about. But that with Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley back and Jimmy Ward back and Jason Verrett is starting out on the IR, but he should be back. Silently, stealthily, that unit has gotten significantly stronger year over year. And I'm excited to see the progress that they make.
Yeah. And as the front seven is one of the best front sevens in football.
Yes.
So they, they'll make our pass defense even better with the pass rush. We have a great front seven, and if these guys can shut down the pass, we have one of the top defenses in the league. So it's really exciting.
It's very exciting.
It's going to be a good year.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the draft a little bit. And I teased it that we added some key players, and I think the Niners so far, obviously we haven't even played a regular season game yet, but from what I've heard coming out of training camp and even seen in some of the preseason games, I'm excited about this group. I think this group has a lot of potential, and it's funny because if you had asked me that before the draft, I was a little hesitant and nervous because we didn't have a pick until pick the 29th pick of the second round.
Number 61. Yeah.
But let's talk about who we picked. So the first pick, I guess our first pick, obviously round 2, pick 29 of that second round was Drake Jackson, edge rusher out of USC. Tell us about him, Grandpa.
So I got to watch him living in Southern California. So I watched a lot of USC games, and I'm hopeful that we can, when we had D Ford and Bosa in 19, I mean, it was devastating.
Yep.
And we haven't really had that second rusher. In fact, Bosa has been double teamed more than any player in the league since then. So I think Drake Jackson, who's going to start the season out really as a backup, he'll play a lot. He's going to provide a pass rush that could be similar to D Ford. And, the quarterback has 2.5 seconds to throw the ball, and hopefully he'll throw it to one of our guys. So I was surprised Drake Jackson didn't go in the first round,
right?
But we have them, and 7 of our 9 draft picks have made the 53-man squad. So that's a good draft.
It is.
And some of them will get a lot of playing time, not all of them, but Jackson will get a lot of playing time. Danny Gray will get a lot of playing time, and he's a burner that is going to light it up and stretch the field. And then Spencer Burford, the 4th round pick, will start at right guard. So, and then Samuel Womack, the little 5'9" cornerback from Toledo, who's just a windmill out there when the ball arrives to the receiver. He just, he's a quick little guy. So, yeah, I think those 4 guys are going to really see immediate playing time. And then as the season goes on, others will.
Yep. Yeah. Some of the other picks, Tyron Davis Price out of LSU, a running back taken in the 3rd round. Nick Zakel, another O lineman from Fordham. Kalia Davis, defensive tackle from UCF, taken in the 6th round. A couple, 6th round pick with Nick Zakel, Kalia Davis. Tariq Castro Fields ended up getting cut as a corner that was actually showing out. And I believe he got picked up already. I can't remember who picked him up. Washington picked him up, who he had ties with. So no surprise there. And then Brock Purdy. We've talked about Brock Purdy, I think all of us. Let's talk about him. The last pick of the draft. What do they call him again?
Mr. Irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's so funny.
He was the 262nd player picked. The last player picked in the 7th round. He's a quarterback from Iowa State. I love him. He's got great footwork. I was pulling for him to at least make the practice squad because we had given Suffield the $2 million guarantee. And then when Jimmy resigned, it shuffled the cards. So Suffield was released.
Yep.
And Purdy made the team. So our quarterback room is solid. I really like Purdy.
I like him too. I think he's a great quarterback. I learned that he was the first team Big 12 quarterback last year, and started something crazy like 40 games. He started every year that he was there. So plenty of experience in a good conference, set all kind of records for Iowa State. I think he was a great pickup and a great add for the QB room. Great kind of 3rd string guy, can grow into it. And I will say, when I watched him in the games, I was impressed, like you said, with his footwork, with his decision making. He's not the tallest guy back there, but he gets the ball out, and this is kind of crazy. He reminded me of Jimmy G a little bit. Quick release, sets his feet, boom. Excited to see what he does.
There's a lot to like in Brock Purdy, and we'll talk about this in a minute when we get into Jimmy, but very likely what will happen over time is that I think Jimmy will get traded and Purdy will be number 2. And that's why I think we're carrying 3 quarterbacks, is for, things that are probably going to happen down the road.
For sure.
Jared, what are your thoughts on the draft? How do you think we did?
I like Drake Jackson. Obviously, he was our highest draft pick. He's I think he went to high school in Corona, right up the street.
Oh, he did.
Yeah. And I love his frame. He's about 6'3", 250. I guess he's a little loose limb, they call him. He's a little rough, but he's got a big frame to put a lot of mass on. And the Niners always pick good edge rushers. They see his potential. He's got, great leadership to follow on the team. So he's going to be an exciting young guy to have on the team. I think he's going to contribute. And Brock Purdy too. I liked what I saw in the preseason. He looked like he was just good with his feet, made quick decisions. I think he's had a lot of good experience. Iowa State is no slouch. And actually pick 41, but it was round 7, the 262nd pick. That's only 73 picks past Tom Brady, and he was 199th pick. So Brock Purdy could be that Mr. Irrelevant that really produces for the league potentially, but he will eventually be our number 2. I'm pretty certain about that.
And I love that Tom Brady posts that every single draft day, his draft card, and he says, work hard. Where you get picked has nothing to do with where you end up. And I love that because wow.
Yeah.
No, I think overall great draft. Excited to see them contribute. Like Mike said, 7 of the 9 making the roster is huge. And boy, Drake Jackson, his ceiling is crazy high. Nick Bosa, it was raving about Drake Jackson, and like you said, his flexibility, his nimble, he bends around these tackles. And what Nick said is does things that he can't even do. So putting Drake Jackson under the wing of Nick Bosa is only gonna, I mean, that guy is gonna skyrocket. Excited to see what he can do.
Oh.
All right, so let's get into some of the Deebo drama. What an offseason. And I think drama is the right word, because man, the whole thing, that the whole way it went down was just dramatic. And in the 2022 term, dramatic being, I'm going to scrub my social media of everything 49ers, and then demand a trade. The whole thing seems so strange. Let's talk about it a little bit. Grandpa, what were some of your reactions when he requested that trade?
Well, I was shocked because, not that I know Deebo, but I do follow him on social media, and he comes across, and this is his personality, he's a very happy, easy-go-lucky guy. He's singing songs in his car. He's just a happy guy. But when you dig into what happened with Deebo, I believe it was the agent, this guy, Tory Dandy, also represents A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf, as well as Deebo. And all three of them went to their teams and demanded a trade before the draft. Now, is that a coincidence? I don't think so.
Well, and if I remember correctly, I think they all scrubbed their social media too. Like they all had the same game plan. It was so weird.
Exactly. So, and then Tennessee traded A.J. Brown to Philly.
Yep.
You know, so they and then there was other movement in the wide receiver group last year, or a few months ago, with what's his name from Green Bay, Devontae Adams, and then Tyreek Hill of Kansas City. He demanded $30 million, and so they traded him to Miami, and Devontae Adams got traded from Green Bay to the Raiders. Green Bay had just paid Aaron Rodgers $50 million, and then you only have so much money to spend. So anyway, there was lots of movement in the wide receiver group, but I think that John Lynch played this as well as you can, because he just, so Deebo had his demands, and it was pre-draft, and then draft day came, and I was worried that we would trade him. We didn't, and I was glad, because we have him under contract for this year, and we could franchise him next year. Technically, we could keep him 2 years without, that's the way it is. And so as things settled, then, they came to a 3-year agreement, and we still have Deebo. And Deebo, when he's asked by the media, why did you demand the trade? There's been no answer.
No, he says it's just business.
And the answer is, my agent told me to, but he's not going to say that. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. Jared, what does Deebo bring to the table? Do you think that because it's still quite the deal that he got for a guy that really had his breakout year last year? He obviously proved his value in the running game and the passing game, all over the field. He was the best player that the Niners had. But with a new quarterback, do you think he's worth the new deal that he got?
I think he is. I mean, he's a threat. I mean, other teams are trying to create little Deebos now. I've seen little reports of that. But his diversity, he just got to get the ball in his hands. He's one of those players, just get the ball in his hands and he makes something happen. People bounce off of him. He's built like a rock, but he's got great hands. We just got to keep him healthy. He's got a bruised knee, I guess. It looks like didn't practice today, but he's just resting a little bit. Hopefully we don't play for another Sunday ahead. So, but I think he was worth it. Equals out to about $24 million a year over the next 3 years. And we just got to keep him happy and get him the ball. I think it's going to take pressure off of our quarterbacks. I mean, because he can run the ball, and he catches the ball often in the flats, so we don't need the deep ball to get the ball in his hands. So little slants and flats, and that's where he can shake and bake and create some yards. So I think Deebo is essential. I mean, the whole league knows who Deebo is, and they all want him. I'm glad we get to keep him, and he's gonna contribute in a big way and take some pressure off Lance, and so it's gonna be good.
I think one of the things that was most interesting, and kind of the assumption that was made when he demanded a trade, is that, oh, he doesn't like running the ball. He doesn't want to be used like he was, because he's not going to last as long in the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. He wants to be a wide receiver, get paid like a wide receiver, not treated like a running back. All this comes full circle. He signs his deal. He gets out in front of the media, has his press conference, and they ask him point blank, like, was it how you're utilized? And he said, no, you know me, like, I just want to do what's best for the team, and I'm willing to run. I'm willing to catch whatever you want me to do, which like didn't really make any sense. But what came out afterward is that in his contract now, if he runs for 380 or more yards in a season, he gets a bonus. And if he doesn't make the 350 or more yards, but he scores 3 rushing touchdowns, he gets a smaller bonus, but he still gets he has incentives built in that kind of incentivize him to be a participant in the rushing game, which is for sure a huge benefit to Trey Lance. And I think a big reason why Patrick Mahomes was so successful in his second year or first year starting in Kansas City was that he had weapons around him. Yeah. And it's no secret that the Niners have weapons around Trey Lance, not only Elijah Mitchell and the scheme that Kyle Shanahan brings, but having Deebo and Brandon Ayuk, who's another solid up-and-coming wide receiver. And of course, our main man, George Kittle at tight end. Trey Lance is going to be successful if he can get the ball in the playmaker's hands and do his job. Yeah. And that's why I think Jimmy lasted as long as he did on the Niners, is because Shanahan has proven with Kirk Cousins and now Jimmy that it doesn't take a crazy good quarterback to work in his system. It takes a facilitator of the ball. I think what Kyle wanted out of Trey, and the reason why they traded up and drafted him, was the ability to be creative and get a little bit outside the pocket and have kind of that release valve of, okay, if nothing's there, I can create something with my legs, but still be a facilitator. I think that will still be what Trey Lance is, but I'm excited to see how Deebo and Trey mesh and work together, grow together. It's going to be interesting.
I think it'll be really exciting. And it is. It's kind of like, I don't know, it just reminds me a little bit of the NBA style. NBA is about athletes, that can play all positions. It's almost like a Deebo who can, he can run the ball from the backfield, or he can catch the ball in the flats. He could go deep. You got Trey, who's just creates options with his legs and with his arm. And you just got a bunch of athletes running around, just doing unorthodox things and moving the ball down the field ultimately, and winning football games. So I love it, actually. I really do.
Yeah, the Niners are loaded. The question is going to be the middle of the offensive line. We're replacing 3, the center and the 2 guards. And so depending on how that goes, we're loaded.
Yeah, that's true. That's huge.
So let's talk about protecting the quarterback. Let's talk about the quarterback. So Jimmy, the writing was obviously on the wall. Those last games of the season, he was getting tons of questions about, is this the last game with the Niners, etc. His very last press conference after we lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship, he essentially bid farewell. It was well known that was the last game that Jimmy was going to play with the 49ers. He had his shoulder issue. He had the option of rehabbing, and that could get him back to full health by the beginning of the season, or it could get surgery. He decides obviously to get surgery. And that, I think, really threw the Niners for a loop. They didn't really expect him to get surgery, and that obviously diminished his trade value. Not necessarily his trade value, but the timing. It's hard to trade for somebody that isn't available. If you can't watch them throw, what are you getting? So that kind of put the Niners in an interesting situation. What were your thoughts, Mike?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind with Jimmy is what a perfect gentleman he has been, and
Yep.
what a great teammate he is.
Yep.
Just put yourself in his shoes for a minute, and he played all last year knowing he was not going to be the 49er quarterback of the future, that he was just putting in some time. And then after the Ram game, the NFC Championship game, he said goodbye to all his teammates. And then, he gets shoulder surgery. There were 11 teams that changed quarterbacks from the end of last season to now. Jimmy certainly would have been one of those. He would have been in the, top 5. But because of the shoulder surgery, teams backed off. He also had a very hefty contract. So I was shocked too that he's come back. But to me, again, John Lynch did a great job. I mean, he even handed over to Jimmy's agent. He said, "You go shop him,
Yep.
and if you can find a team that's interested, great. We'll accommodate you." And so there's been lots of trust back and forth. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a perfect gentleman and a great teammate. I do think that what's going to happen now is somebody is going to get hurt in the first 2-3 weeks of the season. A quarterback's going to get hurt on a team that has a very good chance of winning. And Jimmy will be the number one guy that they come after to salvage their season. And I think a trade will be made. Once again, John Lynch, I just love the guy. He will get something for him. And then Brock Purdy will move up to number 2. That's why we're carrying 3 quarterbacks, is Purdy will probably be number 2. So that's speculation on my part, but that's what I think is going to happen. The other thing about Jimmy is, we all have an ego, and certainly an NFL quarterback would have a large ego. He took a $17 million pay cut to come back to a team that didn't want him. And, he's just, he's one in a million. I just have great respect for Jimmy Garoppolo.
I couldn't agree more. I think great points. Overall, I think that Jimmy is a great guy to bring back. Whether he ends up staying as the second string quarterback for the year or he gets traded, you mentioned week 2 or 3, I think all the way up through the first half of the season, if somebody goes down and that QB2 is not going to carry them to the playoffs, they're going to come knocking on the Niners door asking about Jimmy G. No doubt. They would be idiots not to. So great play by John Lynch, and great for the team, great for Trey Lance. Everybody's talking about like, oh, the locker room. Oh, like how's Trey going to feel looking over his shoulder? I really, maybe I'm obviously an optimist. I'm biased because I'm a Niners fan, but I think it's going to be a little like last year where it was Jimmy's team until he got hurt and then Trey came in. I think the opposite is going to be true this year, that it is Trey's team. We are committed to Trey. And unless Trey is not available, Trey starts and Trey plays, and he's going to make mistakes because he's a second-year quarterback. He hasn't played a lot of football in the last 2 years. And Jimmy's going to be there in case. And if Trey goes down, Jimmy's going to, obviously we already have him under contract, so he can lead us to the Super Bowl if possible. So it went down weird. It was awkward with him, practicing by himself behind the bleachers during training camp. But once again, he acted very professionally. I think the Niners handled it very professionally. We're honest and transparent throughout the whole entire process. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy with how it ended up and how it played out. Jared, what do you think?
I think my thoughts on Jimmy G. I think the fact that we still have him on our roster is just a huge asset. I mean, anybody, I mean, if that's your number 2 guy right now, that's, I mean, any team would love to have Jimmy G at that. And I think for what we paid for him, 6.3 or 6.5, that's a steal. It's good use of our money. It's insurance for a solid season, whether we have, Trey can carry the team, or if we need Jimmy G to pick up the slack if he gets hurt, Lance gets hurt. So I love him. So I think class act, just like Grandpa Mike said, for sure. His stats with the Niners, he's 31-14. I mean, those are nice stats. He took us to the Super Bowl in 2019. He's pushed us in the playoffs each year. I mean, he's just comes up a little short. He's got just a little bit of limitations, but he knows the game. He was the understudy to Tom Brady. He has 2 Super Bowl rings as the understudy to Tom Brady. So, I mean, he's a reputable quarterback. And I think he'll be a great asset to Trey and to Brock Purdy, for that matter, just to rub shoulders with him and just have pick his brain, and it's going to be a good thing. We're very fortunate to still have him with us right now, and we may get something for him in the future. We'll see.
Grandpa, do you agree with me that you play Trey until he's hurt, or do you think it is more of a performance-based thing that he earns QB1, or if he's turning the ball over and not getting the ball to the playmakers like we already talked about, that you got to put in Jimmy G because you got to win. You can't waste this year.
No, the Niners are committed to Trey Lance, and they moved up in the draft to get him. They spent a lot of capital. They're committed, and part of that commitment is to play him. And if Kyle Shanahan says he's ready, last year he said he wasn't ready. He's now ready. So they're committed. They're going to play Trey Lance unless he gets hurt, and it'll probably be, up and down, and he's going to make some mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. I think the first play in the Bear game is going to be a 50-yard bomb. I mean, they're just going to open it up. And so, yeah, they're committed. It's Trey Lance's team, period.
I agree. I think the media is trying to make it up to be more than it actually is. I think it's a depth play. I think it's a potential. The whole Jimmy G thing is a depth play. It's a potential trade. But no, I'm excited. But let's talk about Trey a little bit in reference to the preseason. We, in the new CBA, now have 3 preseason games and a 17-week schedule, which I'm excited about. And the players get another game check. So good for them. Shorter preseason. It was crazy, though, playing 3 games in wasn't it 13 days or something like that?
Yeah.
Quite the gauntlet, but started out with Green Bay. And like you mentioned, Jordan Love, I think it was his technically the second drive, opened it up with that pass to Danny Gray down the sideline. Beautiful play, great catch, stayed in bounds all the way. It was awesome. It was good to see that little glimpse of what could be, what we've heard about, the deep threat Danny Gray coming from the arm of Trey Lance.
Yeah, get used to that. We're gonna see this. And Jimmy can't, he had great difficulty throwing deep. He has great difficulty throwing outside the numbers. And if we know that, every team knows that, and they're playing up, and we still, we're a great offensive team, but it's really going to open up now. And it's going to take, we have to be patient with Trey, but he's going to, his ceiling is higher than any of the other quarterbacks that came out of, the draft a year ago. So we're going to see that unfold. And, they kind of compare him to the kid in Buffalo.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, that he's very much like Josh Allen. Well, that's a good guy to be like.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah. it's going to be exciting. It's
It'll be exciting.
a little nervous, but also exciting.
Yeah. So Trey ended up played two drives, if I believe. He went 4 for 5 for 92 yards. Obviously, like 70 or 60 of those was on that one pass to Danny Gray, with a perfect passer rating of 158.3. Niners ended up taking that one 28-21. And I will say, once again, Nate Sudfeld and Brock Purdy also played pretty well behind Trey Lance in that game. Made some great drives at the end. Brock Purdy, they all ended up with throwing a touchdown. So some good stuff from the 49er quarterbacks in that game.
Yeah. But always keep in mind, it is preseason.
Right.
They're playing against, second, third string guys that won't make the team. Our theme in preseason is really to get through camp without injuries. And that's why you don't see Trent Williams and George Kittle and, Deebo, they don't play much, if at all. And
Right.
that's smart. And we got through preseason. Jimmy Ward has a hamstring. He's going to be out 4 weeks. That's a killer. Jason Verrett, he seems to get hurt all the time. The poor guy, he's on the pup. And so we got through preseason really very healthy, actually.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to breeze right over game 2. Had those practices in Minnesota, ended up taking that game 17-7. Trey Lance did not play. It was cool. He's from Minnesota, played high school ball, obviously, in Minnesota. His team came out to the game and practiced before. That was kind of a little bit of a homecoming. I wish he could have taken some snaps. But once again, 3 games in 13 days. I think it was smart for the Niners to sit him. But as you were talking, Mike, about not everybody playing, and Shanahan also said that they weren't doing any game planning for these games. It's really about getting reps and seeing live looks and reacting. But losing 0-17 to the Texans, I know you can't think too much about these preseason games, but that's got to be the ugliest preseason loss that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, that one bothers me. I keep telling myself that it's a preseason game, nobody's playing, but the pressure, our offensive line was just pathetic. But we didn't play anybody, and preseason is now behind us, and we're healthy. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, there was a lot of comments about Trey Lance in that last game, that he didn't look good, et cetera. I think let's hold off judgment until we actually have our line in there. We actually have the weapons and playmakers that we've been talking about. We have a scheme that Shanahan has drawn up specific to the opponent that we all know is one of his strengths. So let's hold off judgment. Let's throw that one away. Don't look back.
Yeah.
And focus on now the roster that has been put together and now getting ready for that first game against the Chicago Bears. Jared, any final thoughts on the preseason?
Preseason, no, it's in the books. And I think Grandpa Mike said it best, is we really got through without much injury at all, and that's huge. It's about getting the reps, getting the looks. It speeds up the game for all the new guys, and the coaches get a good look at everybody. But it's all about staying healthy and then being ready for game 1 and putting together a great season.
Mm-hmm. So a good transition, I think, to talk about the roster from the preseason is Sam Womack. Wow. Once again, going back to the draft, drafted Sam Womack in the 5th round, the 172nd pick. And what does this guy do? He shows up, shows out, and has earned the starting spot at the nickel position. Yep. Amazing. Nobody saw that coming.
No. And a lot of it is because he's 5'9". So,
yeah.
But he's just got a nose for the ball. I just love that, when the receiver is reaching out to receive it, he goes into his windmill and the ball goes flying. And he picked Jordan Love twice.
Yep.
And he's a real find. So the little cornerback from Toledo, Samuel Womack, yeah, he's going to be good. And with that, we need that. To me, that was where we need the most improvement, is in the defensive backfield, and we've got some new people, and it's going to be exciting. Last year we only had, I forget, it was very few interceptions. I mean, we were -4 for the year in turnovers.
Right.
And this year is going to be different.
You would hope so. But yeah, overall the roster is looking really good. I mean, no surprise that we're carrying 10 defensive linemen. That has always been a priority of John Lynch and his kind of regime here with the Niners. Just really pressure that quarterback, followed up by a good linebacker unit with my boy Fred Warner at the Mike linebacker position. And as we've discussed, bolstering that secondary, I think the defense is going to keep us in a lot of games this year and take further pressure off of Trey Lance to get into some of these horse races that Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have gotten into, of these games that end up 49-52. I think our defense is a top 5 defense, hands down, and I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah.
I really like our defense too. I think that is a strong point of our team, and I love the defensive back situation. Really strengthened that huge with Womack and Ward, and the supporting cast. Linebackers always. I love our edge rushers, and Bosa. So the defense is to be feared for sure. Kind of like Grandpa Mike said, probably that offensive line in that middle, just holding their ground right there. That's going to be the key. We'll be strong on the edges with Deebo. We'll be able to, I think, run outside, the tackles, but the inside game, the short yards when you really need it, and that line has to hold, or even pass defense up the middle. That's going to be like, come on, boys. They're going to grow a lot this year. So that's kind of what I'm seeing as just a general roster look.
We play the Rams twice in the first half of the season, and that means Aaron Donald. Yeah, so they're going to be tested.
He's going to be coming right up the middle. That? Yeah, for sure.
I will say, and we've never been known for super strong defensive lines. We had, Luke Staley, and then replaced him with Trent Williams. But the games we played against Aaron Donald, Shanahan is part of that scheme. Shanahan schemes really well against him. And a lot of the time, I mean, granted, NFC Championship, he did show up in that second half and had some really key plays. But the other, 2 times that we played in that season, we looked pretty well against him. So hopefully we can kind of repeat that and still have success while he's on the field.
It took Donald towards the back half of that game, though, to actually start making some things happen.
Exactly.
I mean, and it was. I think the scheming is huge. Like you said, you get a big rush up that middle all the time. That's easy to scheme against all day long. I mean, that over aggressive play like that. So Shanahan, X's and O's, he is one of the best. So I think they know how to take care of those weaknesses and scheme against some of the top players defensively like that. So we're going to be in good shape.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it's been super fun. We made it through all our talking points. I think we're all really excited for the season. Next week, we are going to obviously preview the Bears game, talk about that, and anything that happens between now and then. But to finish it off, as what makes, I think, this podcast special is, once again, 3 generations of 49ers fans, and hearing from Grandpa Mike and his his stories, some of the stories that he has are just really, really, really fun for the 49ers fans, obviously listening. So Grandpa, tell us about the time that you went to Kezar Stadium when you're 7 years old with your dad.
Okay. So when I was 7, the 49ers were 3. So I was 7 years old in 1949. The Niners started in 1946. And so my father took me to a game when I'm 7 years old, and we went to Kezar Stadium, which wasn't far from my house. It was probably 2 miles, and at the east end of Golden Gate Park. And so it was my first time, and I knew nothing. I knew nothing about football, but my dad took me to a game. And so we're sitting there in the bench seating, and we're playing the Cleveland Browns. And this was the year before the Niners went into the NFL. So they actually played in this league called the AAFC, the All-American Football Conference. And so I'm sitting there and I'm, eating my popcorn, and all of a sudden, 1,000 people got up and just screamed their lungs out, and I have no idea what happened. And so my father finally sat down, and I said, "What happened?" And he said, "The 49ers scored a touchdown." And I was, "What is a touchdown?" And so that was the beginning for me. And I remember the other thing, I loved the red uniforms. So when I was 7 years old, I fell in love. And I fell in love with the San Francisco 49ers, and I have lived and died and loved them ever since. And it's been a wonderful ride. In fact, our first win this next season, we have 599 wins. So the next win is number 600. And they've given me so many wonderful thrills, and I'll share some stories as we go along this year about going to the Super Bowl 23 and on and on and on and on. But I'm just a fan, and I just love my Niners.
We love our Niners too. Well, thank you for listening to our first podcast. Hope we see you on the next one. Until next time.